Hello, welcome to another Monday morning chat with Rozella, Stephanie over in Spokane, Washington. How are you guys?
Good. How's it going?
Good. Now, Stephanie was talking to us off camera about challenges with appraisals, and we thought that would be a really good topic to kind of get into today. Stephanie, you want to lead it off here? What's going on with appraisals?
Just fun stuff per usual. Um, no, I think that I wanted to talk about this topic because as we're heading into a market that is a little bit kind of wonky, I'm gonna say, like prices are kind of all across the board. And there's some sellers that, are still trying to ride the high, and then there are other sellers that are like, yeah, let's come in and like hit the sweet spot. And so I've come across some interesting situations where, first off, we have buyers that are looking for houses, and some of these houses are sitting at a price point that there's not much movement, and we're kind of like, well, why? And then you come to find out, well, there's been a low appraisal. So how does that affect a potential buyer like that's coming along? So, what's your answer to that? If you're
Well,
an
it's a
FHA or
problem.
conventional,
Sometimes it's a problem. It's a bigger problem than others. And sometimes we can solve it really easily. So,
okay,
for instance, okay, we had a client recently that has an FHA loan and they're doing 3.5% down and the appraisal came in low. And as a lender, we're going to base our what's called loan to value on the lower of the purchase price or the appraised value, which is ever lower. So the purchase price was here and the appraisal came in there. So that drops our loan amount and we have that a gap. We call that an appraisal gap. And there are a few things you can do. Number one, you can say, I'm not going to buy this house for that price. The appraiser said it's worth a lot less, so I'm out of here. Or you can go back to the seller and say, well, I'll tell you what, the appraiser said it's a lot less, but I'm willing to buy it for what the appraiser said. How about that? And sometimes they meet in the middle. And sometimes I've had buyers that stepped up to the plate and they can. And in that case, to get around directly to Stephanie's question here, if they have extra funds for the down payment, that's how they make up the difference, if that's the situation, especially with FHA and VA and USDA loans. Those are all challenging because they're low down payment loans. If the client has, like, I have one over that had a 25% down and the loan was 75% loan to value. If they're putting 25% down, appraisal came in somewhat lower. All we had to do was keep the loan right where it was at. The loan to value was a little below 80%, so it didn't really change anything for that client. And they were able to buy the house with the same exact purchase price without ever having a problem at all. Does that make sense?
hmm what happens if the first option's taken? It's like, we're out of here. We're not doing that. And then that house goes back on the market. Say another buyer comes along and they're like, well, we need an appraisal too. Now what?
That's a good question too. So it's possible we had one recently with the same buyer. So the appraisal came in and it kind of addresses your question, Stephanie, and it came in lower and all kinds of issues that our underwriter said, this is a problem appraisal. And we tried dealing with it and the appraiser tried fixing it, but they never got it to the point. So we decided that we, as a lender, we ordered another appraisal. We paid for it for the borrower. It didn't cost him anything. And that appraisal, interestingly enough, came in higher than the purchase price when the other one was lower than the purchase price and had all kinds of problems. So, it could be the luck of the draw of the appraiser you're getting. That is possible.
So then when you have a high and a low, then what did they do then?
Well, we threw that first appraisal out because we didn't accept it, and we
Okay.
accepted the second appraisal, and we went forward with the loan.
Is that called the Tidewater?
Is that called the Tidewater?
Yeah.
I
Or is
don't
that
know. I
only
never
or
heard
is
that
that
term.
only VA?
I don't know.
You've
When it comes
never
in
heard?
higher than purchase price?
No, when you do the Tidewater is when you're questioning the value for the appraiser's report.
Mm.
Okay, I guess so.
Oh, I thought you would have known
If
that.
you say so, yeah.
I think, John, I had it come in one way too, and this was an option. I had the seller and we had a low appraisal and the buyer really, really wanted the property. So for her loan, the lender switched her loan over to a rehab loan because the property happened to need a lot of work. And then they
there you
did
go.
it, the value based on after her rehab amount, or what it would be at after all of that, and then calculated the cost. I will say that process took quite a bit longer to
I'll
get
bet it
it
did.
closed, but that was one way we were able to tackle that.
That's a clever solution. I like that.
What do you do in one of those like low down payment programs and you have a low appraisal, but then you actually have a buyer who has funds that can pay above? Are they allowed to?
Oh, yeah. You know,
Okay.
so that FHA borrower that was putting 3.5% down, if they have extra funds and they put like 10% down, we're fine with it as long as they want to buy it for that.
Okay.
Perfect.
Interesting. Do you recommend, this is where I was really going with this one though, because if you have a low appraisal, in my own conscious mind, I'm like, unless this is like the absolute house of your dreams, you're loving it, like this is rock solid, you really probably should take the advice of the appraiser and not overpay. But I know some people do it and sometimes it's worth it. And it really depends on what that like amount is. If it's like less than 25,000, probably it's something to consider. But if it's that much, you might want to really consider.
I have a perfect example of why she's like warning you about this. I had a seller that got relocated for work unexpectedly, and he had just bought in this house 2 years ago. And when he bought it in 2022 is where our market was like really coming high and hot with right after COVID. And he paid extra above the appraised value, above list price because he wanted the home. He liked it, and then work changed, came time to sell, and it's like the amount of equity and value there were because he overpaid. So that's kind of why Steffani's like, hey, unless this is the house of your dreams and you're for sure gonna love that place for a while, be careful about how much cash you're willing to spend over what the lender's willing to pay, just so that you don't put yourself in a pickle like that.
Yep.
And some
Agreed.
people don't care, some people can, but at the same time, it always goes back to like, what is a smart investment for that person or you as the buyer? Like,
Yeah.
so.
We have that exact discussion with our buyers almost always. Well, the appraiser
Mhm.
says it's worth this. Are you sure you want to buy it? I
Mhm.
love this house. Okay, well,
Mhm.
let's get into it then. Right.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, but at least they can make an informed decision. And I think it's good that you bring up the point, Steffani and Rozella here, that you should challenge that a little bit with them so they really think it through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or renegotiate, use it for more negotiation. Like,
You can always do that, right?
yeah.
I will also like to know that appraisal, the low one, like an FHA or VA appraisal, it's kind of glued to that property for 6 months, correct, John? Like,
Yeah, that's
just
correct.
because that one came in low, you can't reorder it and be like, maybe the
Yeah.
next one will be better. Like, it's attached to that property. So even if you don't overcome that challenge with that buyer for 6 months, that's going to be a challenge you need to overcome with FHA or VA buyers.
If they stick with that financing, if the next
Yep.
buyer has that financing, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even still, can you imagine if, and the only reason why I say this too is because I just had this recently with some of my buyers. We looked at a property and they'd asked me about the value. And I was like, honestly, I think it's kind of a little high. We'll come to find it's because that's what the seller was demanding basically as their asking price. And I had asked what the situation was, and they'd already gotten a low appraisal. So the seller was just not able to or willing to. I'm not sure which one it was, but they were not coming off of that number. And so me knowing my buyers, I'm like, well, they're not willing to negotiate at this point and they're stuck at that price, but that appraised amount is still there. So we know it was not worth fully, the investment it would have been for them.
Yep. Yep. All good points. So you have options, guys. If price comes in low, you can choose to buy it if you're able to do so. Sometimes like I said, with one client, we didn't change the loan or anything. It just worked out for them. Or I would consider renegotiating, as Steffani's saying, with your seller and seeing if they'll move at all. And if they won't move at all, then you can always walk away. Your financing is contingent on an appraisal coming in at the right value. So if it doesn't come in at the right value, your earnest money is typically safe and you're going to get it back.
Yep. And then you just have to move along to a different one.
And go find another home that does come in at value, by golly.
Yep.
All right. Fun chat today, ladies. Appreciate it.
So fun. We love low appraisals. Just kidding. We don't at all.
It's a fun chat, but not a fun situation. That's for sure.
I mean, unless you're the buyer, and sometimes you're like, that's the golden egg I really needed.
Sometimes, but then sometimes it's like, oh man, now we have to restructure and it's a whole mind thing. So yeah.
Very rarely, but every now and then some buyers, you're like, maybe it'll come in low.
So true. So true.
Oh yeah. Thanks, ladies. Nice to chat with you today.
Thanks.
Yes.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Good chat. All right.
Good chat.
I'll see you later, ladies.
All right.
Hasta la vista.
Hasta, what's that?
Hasta la vista.
Hasta la vista, babies.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.